back to channel. Today we are going to complete the whole upper limb. So first let us see the development of upper limb. So the upper limb bud develops by the end of the 4th week, and the lower limb bud develops by beginning of the 5th week, and the upper limb bones are derived from the somatic layer of the lateral mesoderm, that is nothing but appendicular skeleton is also derived from the lateral mesoderm of somatic layer, and the skeletal muscle is by paraxial mesoderm, that is by myotome of somites. So now let us understand the structures and its derivatives, that is the preaxial and the postaxial. So what is preaxial? You can see the preaxial side. This is the preaxial side, that is the side of which the thumb lies, and this is the postaxial side in which our little finger lies. So the preaxial bone is radius, and the artery is the radial artery, and the vein is the cephalic vein. As the bone radius, you can remember artery, radial artery, and cephalic vein. And the bone of the postaxial side is the ulna, that is towards the little finger side is ulna, and the artery is the ulnar artery as before. So bone, ulna, and artery is ulnar artery, and the vein passing is the basilic vein to the little finger side. So this thumb side we have cephalic vein, and little finger side we have the basilic vein. And next upper limb. Now let us hear the rotation of the limb buds. So the upper limb rotates laterally. Means the first you can see this is upper limb bud, then it rotates laterally like this, and so the flexor compartment is in the anterior side. So this is the flexor compartment, and the extensor compartment is on the posterior side. So this is the extensor compartment. And next in the lower limb, but it is lower limb is moving in an opposite direction, that is the lower limb rotates medially. So as the lower limb is rotating medially, the flexor compartment goes towards the posterior side, and the extensor compartment moves towards the anterior side. And now let us see the dermatomes of upper limb, so you can understand it here better. So first the C4 nerve supplies the tip of the shoulder, and the C5 nerve supplies the lateral part of the arm, you can see C5. And next the C6 nerve supplies the lateral part of the forearm and also thumb, here you can see, and the middle 3 fingers are supplied by the C7, and the medial part of the forearm and also the little finger are supplied by the C8. And next the medial part of the arm is supplied by the T1, and the upper part is supplied by T2, so upper part medial side. So this is also supplied by the intercostobrachial nerve. So this one we can remember in order like C4, C5, C6, C7, C8, T1 and T2. So from lateral side to the medial side. So we can remember it like this. These are the dermatomes of upper limb. Now let us start the osteology of upper limb. So first let us start with our clavicle collarbone. So clavicle is a modified long bone, yes, and it's horizontally placed, and it has no medullary cavity, and it is subcutaneous throughout, and it is intramembranous in development. So these are the important points. And the most common site of fracture is the junction between the medial 2/3 and the lateral 1/3. So this is the most common site of fracture. And two ends, it has the two ends, that is the sternal end and the acromial end. The sternal end forms the sternoclavicular joint. It is a type of saddle joint. We know with the sternum it forms it. It is a type of saddle joint, and it is a synovial type. And acromial end forms the acromioclavicular joint. So it's a plain joint. It's also a type of synovial joint. So the weight from the appendicular skeleton transmits to the axial skeleton via these joints. So the ligaments, this is important, we need to know the ligaments which are taking part in it. So we have the acromioclavicular ligament. This ligament is all these ligaments are helping in the weight transmission from the appendicular to axial skeleton. So this is the acromioclavicular ligament, and we have the coracoclavicular ligament. So this is the coracoclavicular ligament. It has two parts, that is the trapezoid ligament and also the conoid ligament. And we have the sternoclavicular ligament. Actually it's not present here. Sternoclavicular ligament attached with the sternum. And we also have the costoclavicular ligament, that is the costal first part, that is ribs first rib, and the clavicular ligament. Both are attached by a ligament known as costoclavicular ligament. And we also have the interclavicular ligament, that is a ligament between the two clavicles. Clavicle is also present on the other side. So these two sides are linked by an interclavicular ligament. And remember the important point here, you can see the ligament which is not involved is the coracoacromial ligament, that is the ligament between the scapula. Of course, coracoid and acromion process both are belonging to scapula. So how it can transmit the weight through appendicular to axial skeleton? So this is a thinking point. So ligament which is not involved is a coracoacromial ligament, because it is between the scapula. And now let us see scapula. So the scapular anterior surface has borders, of course, medial border, lateral border and superior border. So this is a medial border, this is a lateral border and this is a superior border, and it also has angles same like this. So this is a superior angle, inferior angle, and this is a lateral angle. You can see lateral angle. So these are the angles. And now let us understand the muscle attachments. So muscle attachments, you can see here in the anterior side we have medially serratus anterior. So this is the medial border, if you remember. So the medially we have the serratus anterior, and laterally we have origin to subscapularis. So you can see this is lateral, and also of course in mid part this is a subscapularis muscle. And in the costal origin, costal surface, this is nothing but the costal surface which is giving origin to subscapularis. So remember, this is origin and this is insertion. So all the insertion muscles I am not mentioning, only the origin muscles I am mentioning. And next, the inferior belly of the omohyoid to the medial side is also attached to the suprascapular foramen. You can see here the suprascapular foramen. So you can see here omohyoid muscle, suprascapular foramen. So here. And next, the suprascapular foramen actually transmits the subscapular nerve. So this is transmits the suprascapular nerve. This is important. So this foramen, actually it's not foramen now. Upper one muscle forms, that is nothing but the transverse scapular ligament. So the suprascapular artery passes above the transverse scapular ligament. So if the transverse scapular ligament is upon it, then it forms a foramen. So inside the foramen, suprascapular nerve passes, but above the foramen, that is above the transverse scapular ligament, the suprascapular artery passes. So you can see this is important point to remember. And next we have angles. Superior angle is present at the level of T2. So superior angle is at the level of T2, and the inferior angle is at the level of T7 spine, or nothing but T8 body. So this one also you can remember as T2 level or T3 body. And next, coming to the lateral angle. Of course, lateral angle, you know, it articulates with our humerus head. So glenoid cavity, I think this everyone knows, ball and socket joint. So with the head of humerus to form shoulder joint. And next we have the supraglenoid tubercle. So this is supraglenoid tubercle and infraglenoid tubercle as the name, up and lower. So supraglenoid tubercle gives origin to the long head of biceps. This is important. And the infraglenoid tubercle gives origin to the long head of triceps. So you can see origin to the biceps muscle long head, and here you can see origin to the triceps brachii muscle long head. So it gives origin to long head. Let us see the scapular posterior surface. So posterior surface muscle attachments are supraspinatus upon the spine of scapula and infraspinatus below this, and medially we have the levator scapulae. So here you can see medially we have our levator scapulae. Medially we have levator scapulae, and in the origin of the spine we have the rhomboid minor muscle, and also we have a rhomboid major. You can see this is a rhomboid major muscle. And next on the lateral side we have the teres minor and the teres major muscles. So you can see this is a teres minor muscle, and we have the teres major muscles. So these are the important muscle attachments. And next, coming to the medial border of the scapula. So if you observe, the medial border of the scapula only gives the insertion of the muscles only. So you can see all blue color, only insertion of the muscles. And the anterior surface is giving serratus anterior, if you remember here, and the posterior surface is giving levator scapulae, rhomboides minor and major. So these are nothing but insertions. Borders gives only origin to the muscles. So here in the anterior surface you can see subscapularis in the lateral border, and in the posterior surface you can see the teres minor and the teres major muscles. So next let us learn about the coracoid process. The coracoid process is an atavastic epiphysis, and the attachment gives is PCB. So PCP is a mnemonic. P means pectoralis minor muscle, C means coracobrachial. Attachments mnemonic is PCB, that is pectoralis minor muscle, coracobrachialis muscle, and the biceps brachii muscle. So PCB. And next let us learn about the spine of scapula attachments, that is on the posterior side of scapula. So you can see the spine of scapula have insertion of a trapezius muscle. So you can see trapezius muscle, and in the upper border of the spine, yes, in the upper border of spine, and it continues as with the medial border of the acromion process, and it continues to the posterior border of the clavicle. So you can see this is a trapezius muscle. Next let us see about the humerus. So the humerus head articulates with the glenoid cavity, of course we know everyone, and it forms the shoulder joint. And next it is forming the pressure epiphysis. This is important. And the tubercle is forming the traction epiphysis. So traction type of epiphysis is in both the tubercles, that is the lesser tubercle and the greater tubercle. So you can see this is a lesser tubercle and this is a greater tubercle. So the lesser tubercle attachment is attachment to the subscapularis, and the greater tubercle attachment is the supraspinatus and also the infraspinatus muscle, infraspinatus and also teres minor. So this greater tubercle attachments, you can remember it as sit. So greater tubercle is sitting, that is with supraspinatus, infraspinatus and teres minor, and lesser tubercle is only having one attachment, that is our subscapularis. So this is known as traction type of epiphysis. And next let us see the intertubercular sulcus. So this intertubercular sulcus is also known as bicipital groove. So the bicipital groove gives attachment to the long head of biceps. So the long head of biceps has three parts, that is a medial lip, lateral lip and the floor. So the medial lip gives attachment to the teres major, and the floor gives attachment to latissimus dorsi, and the lateral lip gives attachment to the pectoralis major muscles. And posteriorly the neck of the humerus is related to the axillary nerve. So axillary nerve passes posteriorly in the neck, related to neck of humerus, and the spiral groove or the radial groove gives posteriorly content is nothing but the radial nerve in the spiral groove, and the profunda brachii artery also passes with the radial nerve along with it. And laterally it contains a deltoid tuberosity. So this is a deltoid tuberosity, and this gives attachment to the deltoid muscles, as the name says, deltoid tuberosity to the deltoid muscle. Now let us check out the rotator cuff muscles. So in the rotator cuff muscles we have our supraspinatus and our infraspinatus and our teres minor, you can see. So the supraspinatus, infraspinatus and the teres minor, and also we have our subscapularis. So these all muscles together form, these four muscles together form the rotator cuff muscles. So what are those? Supraspinatus, infraspinatus, teres minor and also our subscapularis muscle. And next let us see the quadrangular space. So this is our quadrangular space. So here we have superiorly the teres minor muscle, you can see, and inferiorly we have our teres major muscle, and medially we have our long head of triceps medially, and we have laterally the neck of the humerus. So this is nothing but the quadrangular space, also known as triangular space. These are the boundaries and the contents. So what passes through it is the axillary nerve and the posterior circumflex humeral artery, you can see. So axillary nerve and the posterior circumflex humeral artery are the contents of the quadrangular space. And next let us learn about the triangular interval. So triangular interval is nothing but superiorly it has a teres major muscle, and inferiorly and medially it has the long head of triceps, and laterally it has the shaft of the humerus. So this is the lower interval, lower triangular space, also known as triangular interval. So this is important. Triangular space is different from the triangular so this is a triangular space and this is a triangular interval. So triangular interval contents are the radial nerve, profunda brachii, vessels. And next let us learn about the upper triangular space. So what is upper triangular space? So in upper triangular space, superiorly we have our teres minor muscle, and inferiorly we have our teres major muscle, and the base is made up of the long head of the triceps. So the contents which are present here are the circumflex scapular arteries. So this is important. And next let us see the boundaries of the axilla. So you can see this is the axilla. So anteriorly you can imagine this is a cut surface. So anteriorly you have your pectoralis major and also the pectoralis minor muscle, and medially we have the serratus anterior and also the thoracic wall, and origin is by upper 8 ribs. So medially we have, and the lateral border is made by the intertubercular sulcus of the humerus. So this is actual axilla. So medially we have a rib, serratus anterior and also the long thoracic nerve passing, and laterally we have the intertubercular sulcus of the humerus, and anteriorly we have the pectoralis major and minor, and posteriorly backside you can imagine it, we have a subscapularis and also teres major and also latissimus dorsi muscle. And the contents, so what are the contents passing through the axilla? So the contents are axillary vein, axillary artery, the cords of the brachial plexus. So you can see these are the cords of the brachial plexus. These also pass through the axilla. So you can see these are the cords of the brachial plexus, and here you can see the axillary artery and the axillary vein, this one here you can see this is the axillary artery. And next here we also have the cords of the brachial plexus, especially the medial cord, lateral cord and the posterior cord. Of course, these are the three cords of the brachial plexus, and we also have the axillary nodes. So now let us understand the axillary nodes. So there are anterior or the pectoral nodes. As you remember, axilla boundary anteriorly by pectoralis major and minor muscles. So anteriorly they are known as pectoral nodes around the lateral thoracic vein, that is also known as, it is also given a mnemonic like LT and T. And next posterior or the subscapular nodes. Posteriorly, if you remember, there is subscapular subscapularis. So posterior or subscapular nodes accompany the subscapular vein. And the lateral, it is intertubercular sulcus of the humerus. So lateral or humeral nodes have axillary vein. So these are the axillary nodes. And next let us see the lower end of the humerus. As we already seen humerus, so let us try to understand here. So the trochlea articulates with the trochlear notch. Of course we know trochlear notch. And the medial trochlea is the medial side of the ulna, that is the humero-ulnar joint. Yes, of course we know this. And lateral is the capitulum. So capitulum articulates with the head of the radius, forming the humero-radial joint. And the coronoid fossa articulates with the coronoid process of the ulna and the lower end of the humerus here. So the trochlea, you can see this is the trochlea of the humerus. It articulates with the trochlear notch. And next it is present medially to the ulna. So it attaches with the trochlear notch of the medial side ulna. So to form the ulnar joint. As you know, ulna is a medial side, so this humero-ulnar joint is towards the medial side. And next let us see the capitulum. So capitulum, you can see this is towards the lateral side of the lower end of humerus. So this capitulum articulates with the head of the radius. Of course lateral side is the radial bone. So articulates with the head of the radium, forming the humero-radial joint. So you can see humero-radial joint. And next the coronoid fossa. So this is the coronoid fossa, here you can see. So the coronoid fossa articulates with the coronoid process of the ulna again, because this is towards the ulnar side, again articulates with the ulna. And posteriorly we have one fossa, that is the olecranon fossa. So this is the posteriorly, you can see the olecranon fossa articulates with the olecranon process of the ulna. So almost you can see that there are three joints to the ulna, only one joint to the radius, that is humero-radial joint. To the ulna we have the humero-ulnar joint, and we have the with coronoid fossa articulation, and also we have the olecranon process or articulation with the ulna. So ulna three joints, only with radius one joint. And next let us see the epicondyles. So epicondyles are nothing but the extra capsular structure. So this is the lateral epicondyle and this is the medial epicondyle. So these epicondyles are the extra capsular structures. So the medial epicondyle is giving origin to the common flexor origin, that is also known as the Goffler's elbow, and the lateral epicondyle is giving origin to the common extensor's origin, that is known as tennis elbow of the forearm muscles. So it is giving common extensor origin to the forearm muscles, that is a lateral epicondyle. And next let us see the radius and the ulna muscle. So this is our ulna and this is our radius. So ulna has a ulnar tuberosity. You can see the rough surface over here. So this ulnar tuberosity gives insertion to the brachialis muscle. Remember, it is an important point. And the radial tuberosity, this is the radial tuberosity, gives insertion to the biceps muscle. And next we have the radio-ulnar joint. There is a joint between this radius and ulna. So we have like this both joints together in three parts, that is superior part, middle part and also the inferior part. The superior part joint is a pivot joint, the middle part is a syndesmosis, and the lower part, inferior one, is a pivot joint again. So superior and inferior are pivot joints, the middle one is a syndesmosis. And next let us see the pronation and supination. So the movement of the radius over the ulna. So radius only moves around the stationary ulna. Ulna is not moving, only radius is moving. So what is supination like this? This is a supination process and this is a pronation. And next the joints involved. So what are the joints involved in this? In supination and pronation are the humero-radial joint. So if you remember, as we discussed before, the humero-radial joint, and the superior and inferior radioulnar joints are involved. Only superior and inferior, that is the pivot joints are only involved. The middle one is not involved, there is a syndesmosis. And next let us learn about the oblique cord. So you can see the oblique cord is a degenerated part of the flexor pollicis longus. So this is an important point. And next remember that the anterior interosseous artery pierces the interosseous membrane. So you can see this is the interosseous membrane pierced by an anterior interosseous artery. And next we have one more important Lister's tubercle on the lower end of the radius. So Lister's tubercle is present on the lower end of the radius bone. So this is the radius. So this lower end has a Lister tubercle. And next let us learn about the bridge joint. So in bridge joint we have the carpal bones, that is the proximal row, lateral to medial. So you can see the proximal row from lateral to medial side. So first we have our scaphoid bone, next we have our lunate bone, and next we have our triquetrum bone, and next we have our pisiform bone. So this is from lateral to medial. So medial side we have pisiform and lateral side we have scaphoid in the proximal row. And next let us move to the distal row. So in the distal row from lateral to medium we have a trapezium. So you can see first trapezium, next we have a trapezoid, next we have a capitate bone, and next we have a hook of Hammett, that is Hammett and its hook. So these are the bones from the carpals arranged from lateral to medial side. So bridge joint is nothing but the articulation between the lower end of humerus and our scaphoid and lunate and triquetrum. Only these three bones, as you can see, scaphoid, lunate and also a triquetrum. Only these three bones are articulating with the radius. Only these are involved to form the bridge joint. And next note, ulna is not involved in the bridge joint formation. Of course you can see there is a gap, it is not involved. And most commonly fractured one is a scaphoid bone in the proximal row. Of course in the whole carpals I am saying that it's present in the proximal row. So scaphoid is the most commonly fractured, and the most commonly dislocated one is our lunate bone. And next the largest capitate, that is the first bone to ossify in the second month of the intrauterine life. And the smallest is the largest one is a capitate bone, and it's also the first bone to ossify in the second month of our intrauterine life. And the smallest one is the pisiform bone, and it's a sesamoid bone formed in the flexor carpi ulnaris, because this is ulnar. So flexor carpi ulnaris tendon also passes, that is a muscle, and its tendon also passes here. So it forms a sesamoid bone, the pisiform bone. So it's the last bone to ossify, and it ossifies in the 12th year. And next we have the metacarpal bones. So you can see these are the metacarpal bones. So the first metacarpal bone does not articulate with other metacarpals and articulate only with the trapezium. So you can see this is a trapezium only articulating with the trapezium. So first metacarpal bone is nothing but our thumb finger. So thumb finger it's only articulating trapezium, not with other four fingers. And next the base is a convexo-concave surface. It is a saddle joint. So it is also a type of synovial saddle joint and lies anterior and medial, and primary ossification center only appears at the base. So sometimes what happens is there is aberrant epiphysis. So in that aberrant epiphysis, the primary center doesn't forms in the base, instead it forms in the head. So aberrant means something abnormal. So for the 2, 3 and 4 and 5 metacarpals, the primary center of ossification is at the head. So reverse. For thumb, there is in the base ossification center, and for 2, 3, 4 and 5, there is ossification center in the heads. So aberrant epiphysis also takes place in this 2, 3, 4 and 5. So if it takes place there, then it takes place to the means it shifts to the base. That is nothing but aberrant epiphysis. So it may take place both in our thumb and also other metacarpals. And now let us see some of the other extra points which I have found from bits. So clavicle is the first bone to ossify, of course, that is in the 5 to 6 weeks of our intrauterine life. And the clavicle is a band of the condensed mesenchyme. This is important. And it ossifies partly in the membrane and partly in the cartilage. And next, the clavicle fracture causes upward displacement. So the sternocleidomastoid, the sternocleidomastoid muscle. So it causes of proximal fragment upward displacement and downward displacement of the distal fragment, that is deltoid. So this is important. And next we have the costoclavicular ligament. It transmits the weight of the upper limb to the axial skeleton via the clavicle. And next also the coracoclavicular ligament transmits the weight of the upper limb to the clavicle. And the coracoid process attachments are two muscles, the coracobrachialis medially,
shorted of biceps laterally, and insertion of one muscle, that is a pectoralis minor muscle, and 3 ligaments, that is a coracoacromial ligament, coracoclavicular ligament, and also coracohumeral ligament. And next let us see the glenohumeral joint. So most frequently dislocated joint in adults, and it is also rare in children. It is rare in children, most common in adults. So the glenohumeral joint is especially most common one is the anterior dislocation, not posterior, remember, only anterior dislocation. And the lateral rotation causes the abduction, that is abduction, adduction means towards, abduction means away. So if my hand is moving like this, adduction, it is moving away, then abduction. So where we are, so lateral rotation increases abduction, of course, laterally moves moving away. So that is the greater tubercle contact with the coracoacromial arch. So the arm is laterally rotated 180 degrees. The tubercles are post-rotated, that is increasing the range of the abduction. And the normal scapulohumeral rhythm, this is important, that is 2:1 in ratio. And the long head of the biceps brachii is intracapsular, is important. And in our lower, remember one more point, in our lower limb, our popliteus muscle is intracapsular. And next we have the rotator interval area between the supraspinatus and subscapularis. So with coracoid medial boundary, it is reinforced by the coracohumeral ligament, superior glenohumeral ligament fibers of supraspinatus tendon laterally, and medially based triangular area, and it's not covered by capsule. So these are just to remember points, not to explain one. And the coracoid process is palpable in the infraclavicular fossa, right? And apex lies approximately 2.5 centimeters below the clavicle, lateral to the infraclavicular fossa, that is a deltopectoral triangle. And next, the supinator and the pronator occur in 3 joints. Sorry, the supination and pronation occurs in 3 joints. That is in the humeroradial with the superior and infraradial ulnar joint. And next we have our elbow extended and supinated, carrying angle is 17 degrees. So these are just some of the important points. Now let us see the muscles of the back and also the pectoral region. So the muscles of the back, first important muscle is our trapezius muscle. So the shape of the trapezius muscle is triangular, remember, not trapezium shape. Half of the muscle if you see, so mainly it's triangular shape, and its nerve supplies a spinal accessory nerve, this is important. And the action, so what the trapezius muscle do is, you can see, the elevation of the scapula, along with the levator scapulae muscle, and the retraction of the scapula, retraction means like this backward, along with the rhomboides minor and major muscle, and the overhead abduction of the shoulder joint, that is raising our arm above the shoulder joint. So this also takes place along with the serratus anterior. So every muscle is supporting our trapezius muscle to do the certain action.